First tonight, Rishi Sunak has announced the expansion of oil and gas drilling in the North Sea, granting more than 100 new licences off the coast of Scotland. The Prime Minister told The Sun the move is entirely consistent with the government's goal to reach net zero by 2050.
There are some who think the way to protect our environment is to abandon British oil and gas. But that doesn't make any sense. Even when we've reached net zero in 2050, a quarter of our energy needs will still come from oil and gas. So where should we get it from? Those like Sir Keir Starmer, who want to ban new licences, would make us ever more dependent on hostile states like Russia. They would jeopardise thousands of British jobs whilst protecting Russian jobs.
The Labour Party supports a block on all new domestic oil and gas drilling, and Climate Change Secretary Ed Miliband accused Sunak of launching a culture war on climate. And unsurprisingly, Just Stop Oil are unhappy about the move.
Everybody knows that this is, in the words of the Secretary-General of the UN, moral and economic madness. What Rishi Sunak is doing here is he is signing our death sentences with these licences.
Look, I think this is going to become Rishi's identity over the next year, isn't it? Because the Braverman was boats, Hunt is inflation, of these like 5 different points, isn't it? The NHS waiting list, no one's going to solve that. National debts, no one's going to really solve that. He's going to...
Rishi's got boats too.
Well, he's he's
covering all the bases.
He's covering all the bases. In that rather robotic speech there, I think that this is him trying to launch himself because what? They won the Uxbridge by-election by 450 votes. They think because of you, Les, but Uxbridge were always going to vote Tory anyway. I think they have decided, or his team have decided, this is it. We're going to create the, the green policies are the enemy of the people now because we're sort of run a bit low on immigration. Everyone's kind of tired of that. And so they're creating this green policies and Just Stop Oil are the enemies of the people. So this is an easy win for us because also it's not quantifiable because you can't actually find oil within the next 6 months or year up until the next election. He's making a promise he can't even see through to the end.
Yeah. And also...
Well, that he's going to agree to new...
So he's to the new 100 licences.
Yeah, but
so they'll just drill.
There's no promise.
He's not promising a result.
No, exactly.
He's saying he's going to explore.
He's saying exploring it.
Yeah. Yes. But I promise you a present after the show, Kevin.
OK. But hang on a second. Sounds good. But let's talk about what he's doing here. 25% of our energy requirements, regardless of whatever we do, even if we try and hit net zero, 25% of our requirement for oil and gas by 2050 will be for oil and gas by then. So 75% might be other methods. So I'd much rather, if we have 25% of our needs, which are still not going to be fulfilled by other methods, and it doesn't mean that he's ignoring all the other things, let's have it from domestic sources. Why? Because it's jobs. Why? Because it's tax. Why? Because we can control it more. And why? Because what's the point in just going and buying it on the international market?
And not only
this
that,
greenwash that people are putting up against is a nonsense.
It's also about the fact that if we have it here, then it doesn't have to be transported vast distances on boats to come here with all the rest of it.
It makes every kind of sense.
The problem is, it is a global issue. It is a global problem. And whilst we can look at what we're doing, the people who are actually sort of, contributing more in this are China and India. And if you look at all the power stations that are being built, they're all coal-fired, as I understand it. So, what are we doing when there's these massive, great polluters who are...
Tony Blair said.
Which is what Tony Blair said the other day. And actually, I also thought what Tony Blair said was very interesting the other day, which is if we actually really properly care about this and we actually want to bring down our footprint, we've got to stop importing food, particularly food from so far away so that we can have, I don't know, French beans all year round
which often come from Africa and other
which
places.
often come from Africa. And also you have to look at, tourism, for example. Everybody's saying we shouldn't go flying and everything, but actually flying means that you go to places where they see that tourism actually stops them doing whatever they're doing, which is, that's why I'm saying about the global part of this. It's very difficult in isolation saying, this is bad, we are bad. And I do think at the moment, when everybody's worried about the cost of living, I do think that this goes down the agenda. I know it's very big for Just Stop Oil. I know it's very big for Gen
And the
Z.
planet.
And the planet, I know.
The future
And
of
the
human
future of the planet.
civilization.
It's been sucked in.
Here's the deal. We can all agree on this, I think. What Sunak is trying to do is to keep everybody happy.
Yeah.
And in the manner of those kind of endeavours, he's keeping nobody happy. So he says, I'm opening up the North Sea, 100 new licences, oil, because it's a new Tory approach to the green issues. People have had enough of it and we're going to stand up. Oh, by the way, we're still completely committed to carbon net zero by 2050. We can't have both.
Well, you can, but that's why the carbon capture schemes are really important. Now, you might say they're not enough.
A load of old rubbish. What
Well,
are they?
Actually, it's not a
Rubbish.
load of old rubbish. They do actually work, and it's part of
Oh,
this.
really? How do they work?
Well, what they do is that if you have a factory that produces a whole load of carbon, you capture it and then you put it into the earth, basically, to replace the space that is taken by other
things have been taken
fuels
out.
and gases.
Doesn't capture carbon from car exhausts, though, crucially.
I think
the same way, but
I
it's
don't
about
care.
balancing it out.
But
Yes,
I think
the point about the environment is that it's about the total amount of carbon in the air. And if you're doing things which are both ways, that are reducing the amount of travel and various other things, we've been scared into this view that all oil is bad and we must stop using it tomorrow because whatever. It's not going to happen.
Why don't we
Regardless-
just
but
ditch the
regardless-
carbon net zero plan? Why don't we just get rid of it?
Regardless of how well you explain it, I think the everyman in the street sees it as green is expensive and it's bad for my pocket and it's hurting
you're
people
right.
in my area. So actually, I think he's going to win a lot of votes for this. And I think, there's maybe only been a small margin, but people, especially in bigger cities, we don't want low traffic neighbourhoods. We don't want the ULEZ.
Let me just mention, though, if they were to find a new oil and gas sort of field that was viable, it would take them 5 years to be able to extract it. It only takes 6 months to build onshore wind. But whilst we're on climate credentials, Rishi also had to defend his use of a private jet. The PM often flies private or takes a helicopter, which has a higher carbon footprint and has drawn criticism for using them on recent short journeys to Dover and Southampton, both of which would have just taken an hour by train, or just over an hour. This morning, he was grilled about how he'd be travelling to Scotland for the North Sea announcement.
Before you go, how are you getting up here to make this green announcement today? Private jet?
I'll be flying as I normally would, and that is the most efficient use of my time. But again, I think actually that question brings to life a great debate here. If you or others think that the answer to climate change is getting people to ban everything that they're doing, to stop
it's
people
do as I
flying,
say,
to
not
stop
as I
people
do,
going,
though, isn't it?
to stop
That's the
people
point.
going on holiday, I mean, I think that's absolutely the wrong approach.
Ooh, I think he's going to do bad in the interviews over the next year because he gets really petulant, doesn't he, when he's questioned on something that's absolutely legitimate. He's saying it's the most efficient use of my time. Is it the most efficient use of public money for you to take a private jet for a trip that only takes an hour?
But that's a different question, isn't it? Unfortunately, he is the most important person in politics in this country. So we can say it takes an hour to drive to Southampton. Well, to the train station. You get in the taxi to get to the train station, then you wait for your train. Then you get the train. Then you get to Southampton. You have to get into another taxi.
You've got to do that at an airport, JJ. It doesn't pick you up at your house.
But
Not
for
a
him,
private
for
one.
him on a PJ.
Does it land on number 10
For him
down?
and his
Probably.
PJ, he just goes to an airfield
does
and gets
save a lot
straight
of
on.
time.
Yeah, it saves a lot of time. I think in his position, it's perfectly fine for him to use private jets. I don't see an issue with that.
The only time it wouldn't have been fine for him to use a private jet is if he had said, we must save the planet, we must use these things. And in the same way that we've seen quite a lot of eco-protesters and Harry and others turn up to, green events and having flown private. He's
That's
never
bad.
done that. So I think he's being consistent. And also, he's making a really important point, which is he is the most important person in this country, is the Prime Minister. His efficient time is much more valuable to us, the people.
I know what
Can
I'm
I-
saying.
can I-
Next time I get on a plane, people say, you're ruining the planet. So it's the most efficient use of my
Can I just say, though,
hypocrisy.
he used a private jet in the last 12 months to fly from London to Blackpool. And he refused to open up Blackpool. It is a private airport. It used to be public. And he refused to allow other people or to support calls for Blackpool Airport to be public anymore. And that's what winds me up about Rishi.
Because you're from Blackpool, this is why you're so
because
strong about
local
it.
people should be able to use airports if the Prime Minister can.
They can't afford plane tickets in Blackpool, Nicola. Don't be silly.
See me after the show.
And that was the last time they saw
Just
JJ.
donkeys, is it? They've got electricity there now, you know.
you?
Yes, Joss. They're called the Illuminations.
Have you got television?
Is that good for the environment? The Blackpool illumination, switch them all out! Oh, my God! It'll be the end of the planet.
He
Actually,
is
surely-
saying that some people are
Yeah.
allowed to destroy the planet on private jets if they're very important like him, but
Yeah.
the rest of us have to observe the rules.
Exactly.
He
And for
doesn't say
that,
that.
and for
He
that,
doesn't
he can
say
do
that.
He
one.
doesn't
No,
say
no, no.
that.
He does.
He is, yeah, he does.
Why is he committed to carbon net zero if he's climbing on jets?
Exactly.
No, that's a nonsense.
No, it's not a nonsense. It's a very
I think
logical
it's just
question.
you just getting a little
No,
bit
why is he
overzealous.
committed to carbon net zero and then he climbs onto
He probably
jets?
isn't
Correct.
committed to
Because he probably
carbon net
isn't.
zero.
What?
He probably isn't.
Committed to carbon net zero, yeah.
Be quiet, James.